We are back now with a very special guest, a recurring guest here on the Giant Take podcast, Talkin Giants co-host Bobby Skinner, who's actually just watching the Daytona 500 about a week ago now, and he's joining us today. We appreciate you coming back on to take our questions once again. So thank you for that, Bobby. How you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for having me on. I didn't really appreciate the being harassed by Josh about the Nets at the start, but it's all good.
He's really a pain sometimes. It's really frustrating to be a Nets fan these days. But Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas, both of the Cams, we're set for the future. So we'll see what happens.
Set for the future is one word. Yeah. Okay. It's an interesting way to describe it, Alex. But
we got cancers off our team. All right, it's fine.
That's true. I guess I know, Bobby. I mean, I saw obviously on social media your reaction to the trade, but I don't even care. We're starting with Nets news. I guess now looking back on it, what were your thoughts on obviously first the Kyrie to the Mavs deal, and then KD getting the hell out of there basically a day after that?
So I'll go quick. I've always been a big believer of do what you can to keep them together, because no matter how much of a pain in the ass they are, that's your only way to win a championship. And when Kyrie demanded the trade, I was finally like, I've had enough. Like, goodbye. Please get off my team. But I also was like, we have Kevin Durant under contract for 3.5 years. I get that this is not necessarily how the NBA works. Tell him to either get with it or piss off. Like, you are going to finish out your life as the next 3.5 years as a Nets player. But the Nets didn't have. I just hate everyone, basically. Like, I'm dead. I'm back to being dead as a Nets fan. But I'm even more dead than I've ever been as a Nets fan, because this Nets team will be kind of fun. They'll get in the playoffs, but it's like I can't enjoy that anymore now that I tasted like championship aspirations for the first time in 20 years. So I basically hate everyone except for the players on the team now, minus Joe Harris.
Minus Joe. Ben Simmons, still a fan?
Oh, yeah. Actually, wow. I forgot that. I hate Ben Simmons is definitely number one for my hate. Actually, no. Joe Tsai 1. Ben Simmons 2. I would guess Marks 3. And then, I don't have – I actually like Jacques Vaughn.
Why not?
That's just got a new extension, so good for him.
Yeah. So I hate a lot of them, but a lot of the people I hated are gone. So
yeah. Alex, I mean, I've
never actually like publicly expressed my thoughts on this podcast about it, but I mean, with the Kyrie trade, honestly, I don't know if I was just being ignorant, but I was like, Kyrie, we got Finney Smith, we got Dinwiddie back, we got a couple of picks, we flipped those picks with the Philly picks, maybe we get another player, we get Anunoby or something, and we build this solid core around Kevin Durant, and then Kevin Durant leaves. So, it was kind of like I guess I was in my own world here. I really should have known that once Kyrie requested the trade that KD was going to be gone. But I really don't get it either. I kind of agree with you, Bobby. Like, we know KD, his whole life is basketball, right? He's not like Kyrie and some of these other players who kind of, are just kind of doing, I'm not going to say they're doing it just to do it and for the money type thing, but
he's not going to do what Kyrie and Harden did, where Harden just stopped playing basketball on the court. Kyrie will just stop playing.
Yeah, he can't do that, right?
He already folded once. Folded once.
Yeah, he's not that type of guy. So, hey, you tell him, hey, you're going to sit there for 3.5 years and never touch an NBA court for that amount of time. He's not going to do that. He'll come back. But it sounds like, I guess they had some sort of backroom deal that they were going to try to make it work, and they promised KD that they trade. I don't know, but I guess Joe Tsai is making those stupid deals, but whatever, man. It's frustrating. Josh, stop smiling. I don't want to see him smile anymore, so we're going to stop talking about it.
I was actually going to give you guys some credit. I think, like, I've been seeing the TikToks or whatever about how, like, the team is giving, like, the 2019 Nets vibes now, because there's no stress and there's kind of no pressure. It's just a bunch of youngsters and even the veterans playing for just playing. There's no kind of, I think, pressure on their hands now. And obviously you've been seeing, what was it, Bridges has that three-pointer celebration where he points with the head tilt. Yeah, right. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. And also, since we do live in Jersey, we're able to get the Yes broadcast. So from time to time, I'll watch a Nets game and watch the pressers. And honestly, I'm really impressed by like how Vaughn speaks in his press conferences before, after games. I don't know if Alex, I know you watch, Bobby. I'm sure you kind of stay in touch with them too. He's a really great speaker, and he does
Hopefully, if he improves, just being a great speaker isn't the best. Like being good with the media.
But I'm just saying, like, I'm not. I wouldn't say Thibodeau isn't a great speaker, but it's just like I'm not used to that from like your basketball head coach. It's weird. Having Tom Thibodeau as your head coach, he's not really doesn't really talk a lot. He's not really addressing anything. So anyway. But it's fine. The Knicks will be taking over that fifth spot I think you guys are in right now in just a couple of days. So
9-1 in our past 10 games. That's all I'm gonna say. 9.
Okay, we're I think 1.5 games behind you right now, 2.5 maybe.
Don't aim so high with 5th place.
Hey, listen. As long as we're not in the play-in games and we can beat the Hawks in the first round, that's all I care about. I need my revenge earlier than later.
That's their aspirations, just beating the Hawks and making trade.
Well, they're not even going to be in the playoffs, to be fair. The Hawks just lost their coach. They have no effort. We played them the other day or a couple weeks ago. I think the game going into the All-Star break, lost by 20, 30. That team has no effort right now. And Trae Young that just shows that Trae Young's a great player, but he can't carry a team. So
again, stop putting your goals so high on beating a 12 seed.
I think with that, I think it's time to move to Daniel Jones. No, am I wrong?
Daniel Jones.
So the Giants
also seeking high aspirations, right? With his price tag.
Apparently.
Allegedly.
I want to talk about this. So, Bobby, I assume, did you see what happened with Craig Carton on his show this morning and his claims about it?
Yeah, I don't put any weight into what Craig Carton says as an insider.
I don't either.
Or much at all. But on the flip side, Mike Florio floating out 45 mil. I didn't put any into that. Sure. With Daniel Jones, I'm kind of ignoring all the outside noise right now. And if you look at past contracts and stuff, 15 to 16% of the cap for his average annual value is what I think he should get, and that is between 34 and 36.5 mil. Mm-hmm. I think that's where the Giants should be putting their sights on, and they have a lot more leverage than people would think. Just because he's an unrestricted free agent. Well, there's an assumption that he's going to be back with the Giants from other teams around the league, which means they're not making plans to go and sign Daniel Jones, because even if he didn't accept their offer, they can franchise tag him. So I think a deal is going to get done. I would like it to be 36 mil or less. That's not just me being a fan that wants to pay less money. That's looking at the history of quarterback contracts, and that's where his career. That's where he would end up. And even that's a little generous. So I think between 34 and 36 is where he should and will end up.
Yeah, I just want to confirm with you that, for the people that are saying, I guess 30 to 35 is in the range that you said, because that's 34, 35. But I think anything under that 34 is just kind of really not possible, because it isn't, if they do sign him to that tag, that is 32.1, right? Isn't that what it is? 32 something million dollars?
Yes. Yeah, it's 32 something for the franchise tag. And the only quarterback that has kind of fell into that percentage, which was Alex Smith, that would put him at 30 mil. And that was just kind of a one-off contract. I don't see that happening with Jones, and that was so long ago. So now that sounds like a big number, but that is the QB middle class market. The upper class of quarterback contracts is 45 minimum now. After Kyler got 46. So Jalen Hurts will command probably $50 million. And any quarterback who's viewed in that top tier will get probably minimum of 47, 48 million average annual value. So 35, the floor for quarterback contracts is so high, but that is the mid-tier contract that I think Daniel Jones will get.
Yeah, when looking at kind of all these, rumors, I guess, that he asked for 45, blah, blah, but in negotiating, I don't think, it seems like some people don't know how negotiating works. One side comes in high, the side that, really want, of course the player's going to come in high, and then the team's going to come in low. I bet you, Joe Shane and Brian Dable and stuff like that are coming in at, say, 32 million, something like that. Who knows? I don't know. And, Daniel Jones and his team are coming in supposedly at the 45 mark, and it's probably going to end up somewhere in the middle, probably in the high 30s. I think you look at his value. I was looking at, other players, in similar range in terms of his ability. I think Dak Prescott's probably he's overpaid clearly, right, at 40 million. But I think Daniel Jones going to end up just under that value would be my guess, probably 37, 38, because, Dak was what, 40 million? That was a couple years ago he got signed to that extension, right? If I'm correct.
It was 2021.
2020, yeah. So just
which was a weird year because of the cap not going up because of COVID.
So, I think, would you say that Daniel Jones is a more valuable player is he a better player than Dak Prescott? Probably, about the same, maybe. I don't think
you can't look at their body of work and say that Daniel Jones is better than Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's obviously other outside factors, and I think Daniel Jones can get to that level. But and again, Dak has choked in the playoffs time after time, so it depends on how much you wait on that. But Dak has been a really good quarterback for a long time. Agreed. It's just kind of those playoff mishaps, and I mean, there's flaws to his game, which it's why he's not an elite quarterback. He's a really good quarterback, but he's not an elite quarterback. But I think Daniel Jones falls in the good quarterback tier right now, which again is super annoying at sports radio, but that's like the tier he falls in right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I think, you look at Daniel Jones also, right? This season was really his, I don't want to say like breakout season, because it's not like he blew the world away, but in terms of the team just doing really well overall. But I think this is his first season, right, that he's played all, 17 games, right? He's had injury history in the past as well. I don't think he doesn't have that, upper echelon resume. He doesn't even have the resume of Dak did, like you said. Dak was playing at a high level for for several years before he got that contract, whereas Daniel Jones really only played at a reasonably high level, I'd say, this past season. So I think that's something to take into account as well.
Yeah, when you look at other guys that have been in that situation, and we pull it up right now. I have my notes. The Ryan Tannehills of the world, Kirk Cousins, Alex Smith. It lands in between like the 14.9 to like 16% of the cap.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the Giants should end up. And again, that's between 33.7 and 35.9 average annual value. Really, the true test is how many years do they give him? I think that tells a story on what they think of him. Yeah, most quarterback contracts are like, it's just one non-guaranteed year at the end. So if it's a 5-year deal, it's 4 years and so on and so on. I think that'll tell the story on what they really think on him is how many years they give him.
I can't imagine they do 5. I would have to assume it's 3 or 4, most likely.
If they truly believed in him, 5 would be the best because that cap hit would be a lot less, 5 years from now instead of having to re-sign him. But if they have trepidations and there's like, hey, we were not able to push the ball downfield, and a big part of that they thought was DJ's processing, then you got to go 3 years. And even then you might want a franchise tag, but putting $32 million on the cap this year would be really tough. So
tough, yeah.
It's a tough situation when you don't have a for sure, this is going to be the guy. We want this guy to be the guy for the next 6 to 8 years type thing. And that's where the Giants are.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, I guess going to what you were talking about earlier about like this past year being his, oh my gosh, what was like the year you called it? Breakout year, the breakout season. I think that's also like his big, this is like his big way to kind of, I guess, sell it to the team, because it wasn't even it wasn't just like, okay, this is where he broke out. It was also he did this without top tier weapons too. I think that's going to be a big part of his pitch to the New York Giants too, is that it wasn't even with top quality talent. And I like to not I think it's complete rumor whether what Craig Carton says or not, the $45 million a year with the Mike Florio report. I do want to say this, that if he does sign higher, like more amount of money, then I think he knows, or at least he should know, that that's not going to give the Giants a lot of cap room to go out there and then sign free agents to help him with this offense. And he's going to be working with similar quality talent as he did last year with mainly Isaiah Hodgins, who we know he just got brought back for a minimum deal. But if he's signing contracts in the $40 million ranges, that doesn't really leave the Giants with a lot to go out there and make moves in the offseason in the free agency window. So I think if he really wants to stay in New York, I'm sure that's something he's probably considering too, that he knows that if he signs something in the 30-something-ish $million range, that the Giants can actually, use the rest of that money that they don't sign him with to go and get weapons, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's guys on the team right now that's like they're trying to bring back with Julian Love, maybe even a guy like Richie. Like that could make the difference between bringing back Richie James, which doesn't sound like the biggest thing in the world, but it's like it's a nice piece to have on this team as depth. So, yeah, but at the end of the day, these players are worried about their money and their money only for the most part, unless you get a rare guy like Tom Brady who basically got money funneled through TB12. Then he's going to worry about his money, but at the end of the day, the market does not dictate him getting $40 million. Like he's not the quarterback that's up next. He's the quarterback whose contract expired, and they're going to get a deal that's reasonable.
I think it's kind of interesting. You brought him up too, Julian Love, right? Kind of, I guess, the third guy. You got the top two guys with Saquon and Daniel Jones, but you've got a guy in Julian Love who was pretty critical to the team this past year, the year before as well. And no, there's not really any talk about what his situation is with re-signing the team. Is he going to re-sign? Are the Giants in we don't really know. We've heard the rumors about Saquon and their valuations, kind of being farther away. We've heard obviously the $45 million thing for Daniel Jones. Haven't really heard a lot about Julian Love as much. Obviously not as much of a, household name for the national media to talk about, I guess. But do you think he's a guy who could possibly not re-sign with the Giants and could be, someone that kind of could go away in free agency and just not return? Is his asking price going to be, too much for the Giants, considering they're already going to have to give a new deal to Xavier McKinney in the near future? What are your thoughts on that?
I think he could be a surprise walk. For him, when I look at other player contracts that in recent was Jaron Curse out of the Cowboys and Jordan Whitehead of the Jets. Those guys got 2 for 10 and then 2 for 14.5. And even then, I think that's a little rich for Julian Love when Wink Martindale has never put a huge value on re-signing safeties with his team. And you have Xavier McKinney. You drafted Dane Belton. They like Pinnock more than most. And Julian Love is someone who's like best fit as a box safety. He struggles when he's playing from deep. So we're not talking about a premier safety. We're talking about a good player in Julian Love, a solid player. And you look at I know he's coming off of an injury, but Jabril Peppers got 1 year, $2 million last year. Jabril Peppers is an undoubted better player than Julian Love. So the safety market is one that is really hard to read. It really is. Like you look at the contracts, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But I want to bring him back. I would aim at that 2-year, $10 million type deal for Julian Love.
Yeah.
Maybe even 3 years if you want, because you have at least a solid player in him who's got a high floor.
Yeah. I think 3 years, $16 million is probably on the high end, probably of what you'd want to do.
Yeah, but that's a fair deal. Obviously, it's a little uncomfortable, but it's a fair deal.
Yeah. And I guess we'll transition to Saquon Barkley as well.
I was going to say, yeah, I guess that's who we move to next, right?
There's been huge rumors, obviously, about him, their valuations being farther apart. Christian McCaffrey money, $16 million. Is that where he's going to want to demand? Is he going to be much more team friendly, more 10, 11, 12 million?
I'm sorry to cut you off, Alex. I don't think the Giants are signing into a contract. I really
You think it's a tag or bust? I don't.
Yeah.
I personally have a number in my head, which I would not go over unless possibly the years are really short. But 12.5 is really I know this has been reported that that's Joe Shane's number, as well, 12.5 million a year. But I feel like that's about as high as I go for a running back, even someone as talented as Saquon Barkley. But I think the running back market's really tough because now you're seeing these teams like the Eagles, like the Chiefs, who are having success with, I don't want to say, I want to say less talented backs, but, guys who are just not taking up as much of the cap room as, players like Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, etc. When you have, you saw what's happening with the Titans, right? Titans are paying Derrick Henry, 14, 15 million a year. And now they're having to cut all these guys. I'm not saying just because of Derrick Henry, but Woods, Luan, they had to get rid of AJ Brown. They didn't want to sign him to a big contract. Paying running backs does have its consequences. So that's kind of what I'm concerned about with the Saquon Barkley contract.
I think they should quietly just have a plan of franchise tagging him. Like you said, they supposedly turned down 12.5 mil. They should not go over. I don't even know if they should offer that depending on the years. Yeah. The franchise tag is $10.1 million.
Just keep franchise tagging him over and over again.
Yeah, seriously. I know it's it's all in one. We can afford that on the books. I'm sure Saquon Barkley would not appreciate it, but at the end of the day, I think that's the right thing to do from the Giants. Like, do what the Steelers did with Le'Veon Bell, where it's like, we don't want to lose you because I don't want to lose Saquon Barkley, but I don't know if I want to pay him a long-term deal either. So I would franchise tag and not have any desire to get a long-term deal done unless it's something that's super cheap, which is not going to happen.
I think there's also an outside thing too, right? You know, John Mara is going to have some input on this, right? Because Saquon Barkley, he sells jerseys. He's kind of the face of the franchise. So I think as much as maybe he's not worth that amount of money to the franchise, to, you know, revenue, he could be, to just have him around anyway. But I'm not sure that's how Joe Schoen operates. But I think in the past, you know, John Mara has really been reluctant to, you know, get rid of guys who are kind of the face of the franchise.
Oh, yeah, I agree. It's tough because he kind of plays his cards perfectly. So there's a lot more than just, do we play this player? There's so much more in play with Saquon Barkley, and you can't ignore it. You can't. But you can't ignore the evidence of Saquon Barkley not being the same player that he once was. You can't ignore the fact that he has a huge injury history. You can't ignore the factor that even though he had a really good year this year, it wasn't a spectacular year. He just got a lot of carries. It was his third best year as far as yards per carries go, and he's only really had 4 seasons. You know, and last year in 2021 was obviously pitiful. You can't ignore the fact that if he does have a smaller injury in season, the 5 games that he comes back, he's struggled, whether it's 2019 or this past season. And you can't ignore the fact that out of 7 workhorse backs in the NFL this year, you guys are getting all my notes for the podcast for Friday. He was 7th in yards after contact per attempt. So he's still a really good player, but it's dangerous to invest. But where I want to keep him is, like, the Giants aren't filled with talent, so letting a talent walk would suck.
Yeah.
I think right now, I'm assuming that the Giants still have that franchise tag set in place for Jones just in case the contract negotiations don't go well. And then obviously, I think everyone knows this. So obviously, if the Giants end up signing Jones for however much they sign Jones, they tag Barkley. I think it goes right to Barkley. He's that number 2 option. But I do think that I bet you Jones is probably still that number 1 priority for the tag, just in case there are no. Because I mean, would you rather have your star running back or your star quarterback? What position's more important in the league? So I think, I would assume that
Daniel
right
Jones
now
is priority 1 for sure.
I think on the franchise tag, he's number 1 right now. But obviously, if he signs, I think Saquon moves right up the list and goes to number 1. But I mean, we know that already. So I mean, the ideal situation, the dream scenario is Jones signs for, Bobby, your range of that $34 to $36 million deal for. I don't even think the years matter. Just signing him, getting him, to put that pen on paper, and then being able to tag Barkley. That's the dream scenario for all Giants fans. And what sucks is, like, I think everyone on Twitter right now is just antsy, and with seeing all these numbers, they're bouncing, like a ball, like a pinball, I guess, all over the place, because they're all just waiting, even though it's March 7th or whatever that date is, they're waiting and they want it to happen immediately. They want Schoen to, get the contract negotiations done now on when we're recording this Thursday night, February 23rd, even though they still have about 2 or so weeks to work with. So it's not like that. That's not how we should know this as fans of football. That's not how, contract negotiations go. They take time. They take days, even weeks to do. So it seems like Jones is taking his time. I mean, he just switched those agents now to athletes first. And I don't think Schoen or the front office of the New York Giants is in a rush at all on their side anyway either. Because, they obviously don't want to act like they're in a rush, because then that could look to the agency and be like, oh, they really want you. They're making offers now. So I think both sides know exactly what they're doing on Jones's agent's side and the Giants too. And Schoen, even though this is his first, I guess, full off season with the team in the GM role. I mean, he's done this before as an assistant GM. So it's nothing new. Yeah. That's all I got.
I would like it to, I agree. I would like it to get done, because I'm kind of tired of it. So we're actually, I have 4. We're doing a podcast finally on the pending free agents. We've been teasing it. I have 4 full pages of notepads ready to go for this and just be like, anytime anyone asks my opinion, be like, listen. Just listen. I'm not tweeting at you. Just listen.
So I have a question.
You go ahead. No. I've been talking for a bit. You go.
I was just gonna say. So we've talked about this before, but you're a pen and paper notepad guy when it comes to your notes. I don't think we've ever talked about it with Justin. Is Justin also like a pen and paper guy? I don't think so.
Nope, right? He's not. He's a young kid like you guys.
Yeah.
So he's all digital. I'm still old school pen and paper. So now my draft binders are like this thick. But I will be honest, I have started last year. I started doing them in Google Docs, but I still write them down on paper just because I like to have the binder. And the old saying, you remember it better if you write it down. I still think that's true. So
it is
true. And I just like having the big binder of paper. It makes me feel like a football guy.
It makes you feel like Dave Gettleman on draft day.
Exactly. People were clowning Dave Gettleman for that. And I was like, that's the coolest draft binder I've ever seen in my life.
I forget what I was going to ask now, Alex. You took me out of my group.
Sorry about that.
Oh, free agents. So it's not. I don't want to.
We're not going to ruin the episode.
We're not ruining the Talking Giants episode. Obviously, everyone here.
Oh no, go for it.
Probably already listened to Talking Giants.
Good reps.
Or you're
good reps.
Or you're I guess coming. Yeah, you're either coming to us after or going there after. I'm sure. Is it all? Are you guys going through like any position of need, or how is that getting?
We're just doing pending New York Giants free agents. So Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley are the big two. Then Julian Love, Darius Slayton, Richie James are like the next tier. And then it's like, then we have Gates or Feliciano as a segment. And then it's the last segment, which there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, like 13 of these guys of our segment is minimum contract or walk. So yeah, I'll give it to you quick. Like, O'Shane Zimenez, walk. Fabian Moreau, minimum. Jalen Smith, walk.
Oh,
Jamie Gillian, I put whatever.
Ooh.
Matt Breida, minimum. I went mini. And then Jihad Ward, I went minimum. And then there's a lot of walks. I won't bore you with Marcus Johnson and Justin Ellis.
What's your Darius Slayton thoughts, I guess? I'm curious.
No, it's a conversation that has not been talked about a lot because everyone's so Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley heavy. I think it's an important decision with him, because like if you look at pending free agent wide receivers, he's like the fourth most productive out of all.
I know, it's crazy. It's like such a weak class.
It's like Juju and then the Darius Slayton tier right there. I went and looked at other contracts like Zay Jones got 3 for 24. Cedric Wilson got 3 for 22. So I think that's where he's going to end up. And that might be a little too rich for the Giants, who aren't the biggest fans of Darius Slayton. Like Joe Shane and Brian, they're not big Darius Slayton fans. So I think he ends up walking, but you got to have some replacements. Like you got to have like kind of 2 high floor players, or like go out and get someone who you believe will be your number 1 wide receiver. Because without his speed, this offense would have been inoperable. So I think it's a big decision. I would love to have Slayton back, but I'm leaning that he's probably out. But I think another team's going to give him some decent money because he's led the Giants in receiving 3 of 4 years.
I think it's kind of confusing, to be honest, for me, why Dable and Shane don't really like him, because he kind of has the attributes of a guy that they would like, minus the drops, obviously. So that always kind of confused me how he didn't really fit into the offense always. But we saw he was pretty much in the doghouse in the beginning of the year. Obviously, when a lot of these injuries hit, he was able to come back in, but I'm kind of conflicted about Slayton. I don't really know exactly what his value is. I don't know what his value is to other teams, what it is to the Giants. I think he's going to be an interesting one. I think him and Love are ones that people aren't really talking about, but are actually really important. Because if you lose Darius Slayton, now you're suddenly left with Hodgins and Galladay's gone.
Hodgins and Wan'Dale are basically the only receivers that are real receivers that are on the roster.
And Wan'Dale is going to be coming back from an ACL, right? So he's going to need some time to, catch back up to speed. It's going to be tough for him. We always see, you kind of have trouble. Honestly, I saw Robert Woods got cut the other day, right? Or what was it, yesterday? Yeah. Would be interested in him for the Giants. Not on a long, huge deal, but we always see that wide receivers struggle the season they get back from the ACL, right? Obviously, Robert Woods tore his ACL 2 seasons ago now. This past season was his return from the ACL injury. I think Robert Woods is a guy who now with a full year of ACL recovery, past him, could he possibly kind of get back to his old ways where he was, a pretty solid receiver?
He would fit what the Giants want to do big time too.
I think
he is going to be what, 31 this year?
He'll
be 31 this year. 30s. He had 520 yards last year, so not very successful.
Yeah. You'd be banking. I could
see him coming in on like a minimum deal. I don't know where I don't know what the market's going to be for him.
Yeah, like, I think it would be more of a contender, I wouldn't do it,
but yeah, he could.
I think he'd like somewhere like the Chiefs or even the Eagles or something. Eagles don't have any cap really.
I got one more. I got one more thing, and it's of course I have to go to the next part of the offseason, past free agency, and that's the draft.
Scouting combine a week from today, right?
That's also true. Also true. I'm very excited. You were able to go to the Senior Bowl. I'm not speaking for Alex, I'm speaking for myself. So far, just because this is what we've had to do for our podcast, I looked at the top wide receivers and the top linebackers, and I'm starting to look at cornerbacks because that's the next position of need we're going to cover. I'm going to keep the question as broad as possible to let you kind of take over with just any guys that, like some guys that have really stood out to you so far in your draft research.
The corners look really good, like Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. I really like him, and he'd obviously fit exactly what the Giants do with press man. So I've been watching the linebackers. Drew Sanders out of Arkansas. He's a fun player, but he's got a lot of cleaning up to do about his game, but he's new to the position and he plays aggressive. Like, I can work with a guy like that. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being picked 25. But I like Jack Campbell, the Iowa linebacker. I don't know how, I think he might go higher up in the second round, so that might not be an option for the Giants. And then receivers, I'll be honest, guys, I haven't really gotten into them yet. At least the top of the class ones. I kind of watched most of the Senior Bowl guys. But I want a true wide receiver one. And the Giants just drafted Wan'Dale. I don't know if they can draft a guy who's projected to play mostly in the slot in his career, whether, whoever that is, whether it's Josh Downs or whatever. Yeah. But I honestly, I see myself landing on defense at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I really do. The Giants, they need a lot of help on defense more than you think. They need corner. They need a linebacker desperately. And I think they could even use another edge if they really, really wanted to, even though that's not going to be top of the priority list for the Giants. So wide receiver one, a true wide receiver one is the thing that can help the Giants close the gap the most in one offseason. But I don't know if I don't want to force that either.
I don't think. Oh, I'll let you go.
I was just gonna say I was going to you, Alex. It's funny, Bobby, that you say you haven't done like much scouting for the wide receivers because that's fine because you're speaking Alex's language right there. He loves Yoshivash, right? I think that's how you pronounce his name. That was at the Senior Bowl.
Andre Yoshivash out of Princeton.
Yeah, I think he's exciting.
And then also, what's the Michigan
Jaden
State?
Reed. I'm a big
Jaden Reed. I like Jaden Reed. I like Jaden Reed a lot.
I like him a lot. Yeah, I was watching his tape, and to be honest, I don't see. Like, there's a gap for sure, but I don't see that big of a gap between a Jaden Reed type player and your, I'm trying to think who are the top.
Reed is going to be someone who puts up 600 to 700 yards every single season.
That's
I don't see a big difference between him and someone like Downs or someone like even.
Yeah, I haven't watched Downs yet, but Jaden Reed
even
is a solid
Flowers,
player.
Right? Yeah. Like, I think there's not. The problem with this wide receiver class is there's not anyone who's really a pure number one wide receiver except for Johnston, who's probably going to be gone by the time the Giants pick. Most likely.
Top 10, I think, yeah.
I don't think he's going to go top 10. I think he'll go in the teens probably would be my guess. I don't think he's as good of a talent as some of the guys. I don't think he's like a Garrett Wilson or Drake London level kind of player, but I think that's kind of the problem here. So if you're going to want a number one wide receiver, I think you're probably going to have to either trade up in the draft, which probably won't be what the Giants elect to do, or make a trade, probably trading that first round pick for an elite guy. But I mean, you look at the wide receiver market, in Tampa Bay, I guess that's probably the one place you'd look right there. No more Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin now just sitting there with, no quarterback at the moment. I think that would be potentially a place that you could look, but there's just not a lot of options out there right now. So I agree with you. I think the Giants will probably go defense, try to add a few more, wide receiver 2, 3s, to surround Daniel Jones with, but I think they're going to still have to wait for that number one guy.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you checked out, because I just started like my cornerback stuff this week, so I'm going like one down. Witherspoon out of Illinois, unbelievable. Like
I haven't watched a lot of guys, to be honest.
Really?
I've been behind.
So I didn't even know about, like, I don't really watch college football unless like there's a game on Saturday. I'll check it out. Whatever. Witherspoon, I checked him out on, how he was doing. 22 years old. He's only a junior out of Illinois. Played all 4 years of college football. Let me see if I can find. Targeted 63 times, allowed 22 catches for 206 yards, 3 interceptions, 14 pass breakups, and he didn't allow a single touchdown all season. Played man coverage more than any other cornerback in this year's draft class, 560 out of 738 snaps. And I read like the PFF, their top rankings of cornerbacks, and I think whoever wrote it said like it was the best cornerback they might have seen in the last 9 years of scouting.
Wow.
So anyway, when I was watching his highlights and stuff, I was just kind of, my jaw dropped, like, so good. And he's not falling to the Giants, no way. Definitely another top end of the first round pick, but just I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up because I don't know if you saw him or not yet. But yeah,
I got you. I got to start cranking through like the top guys and get it done before the combine's over.
Yeah, because you're gonna. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, with the Senior Bowl, I assume you did more research on the Senior Bowl guys. One guy who I've been looking at a little bit with the cornerback group, he was at the Senior Bowl. I want to talk to you a little bit about him. Julius Brents from Kansas State. What did you think of him at the Senior Bowl? Obviously, it's a little bit different, right? You can see the clips online, but when you're actually there, you kind of get a better sense of it.
He was solid. He had a couple down plays here and there, but he was really solid. Like he was one of the better corners out there at Kansas State.
And he's 6'4". He's got like crazy length. I think he's one of those guys who maybe needs a little bit of development. I saw one person like say Tariq Woolen, because obviously similar size, length, etc., but he's not like that quick, obviously. But yeah, I think you're going to see more and more of these guys, I think, who are more freak athletes. I mean, you see it every year, but I feel like every draft, more and more, these, I guess, higher floor guys are just going lower and lower, and it's more these high ceiling guys. I don't think, 10 years ago, Trayvon Walker would have ever gone number 1 overall. I feel like it's kind of like a development in how scouting is going now in the NFL. I'm not sure. Is that your opinion too, that it's kind of developing to more raw prospects who have more upside rather than these higher floor guys?
It's weird. I'm seeing like Lucas Van Ness out of Iowa. I've seen him as like a top 10 guy. It's like all he knows how to do is bull rush, and he's kind of a tweener between edge and defensive tackle. Trayvon Walker last year was insane. I actually get it with like, I don't know. It's kind of weird the way it's going, where it's like at the end of the day, we're drafting football players. Now the fact is that the best players do fall into those categories of like those freak athletes, but they also know how to play football well.
Yeah.
So like I still disagree with drafting Trayvon Walker first overall. Like I don't think. I mean, obviously, if he turns into a stud, I'll agree with it. But like I don't see him turning into the first overall, someone worthy of the first overall pick. So it's been interesting to see. Like I think people are putting the combine is more important than I used to think, but it's not the most important thing.
Yeah, agree.
Good, Alex.
Yeah, I'm all good.
All right, I am too. Bobby Skinner of Talkin Giants, and also check out JM Football too. I forgot to mention that in the intro. Does some film breakdowns there on draft prospects too. You've been doing recently, right?
Yeah. Drew Sanders should be out next week. I got a couple matchup breakdowns of Darnell Wright versus Will Anderson, Paris Johnson versus Lucas Van Ness. So got some good stuff coming out.
All right. So, Philly, thank you so much for joining us once again, and keep pumping out that draft content, as we will too. So, thank you so much, Bobby. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.